and they're off. Here we go.
Episode 304 of the Dirt Church Radio Trail and Ultramarathon podcast. Kia ora koutou, I'm Matt Raymond and I'm alone this week. Ellie is currently in Jindabyne, and I guess when you guys get this on Wednesday, that's where I'll be as well. And Andrew is, from what I can guess, curled up in a ball somewhere weeping after his absolute monstering of the coast to Cozzy. So this week, we thought we'd flip the script and do something different. I mean, it is getting close to Christmas after all. I recently had a conversation with a super cool human being that I wanted to bring you and actually couldn't wait. Eszter Horanyi grew up in Colorado being what she called a free-range kid and has accomplished some pretty incredible stuff like an FKT on the Tour Divide and an unsupported Nolan's FKT, but you'll hear all about what that means and what that is in our chat. Eszter is a writer and editor at iRunFar, which is the OG trail running website, and spends summers hanging out in the South Island. She lists her interests as including trail shuffling, ultra trail shuffling, mountain bikes, packcrafts, and burritos, which all sound really cool, but I reckon she's sandbagging on the shuffling bit. Anyway, let's crack in to the special bonus chat with Eszter Horanyi.
Dirt Church Radio.
Eszter Horanyi, welcome to Dirt Church Radio and welcome to Aotearoa. How's it been?
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great. You have a great country here. In case you ever forget that, you have a great country here.
Yeah, I mean, it's got its own set of issues and tribulations, right? But yeah, I think on balance, we're doing okay. You're no stranger to New Zealand, though. How long have you been sort of coming down to this part of the world?
So this is my 7th trip down here. I got a little addicted. My brother came down on a work holiday visa in 2016 and didn't go home for Christmas. And so I said, I'm not going home for Christmas. And I came down here to visit him and just absolutely fell in love with everything here. So I just come back and I hang out and it's great.
And so I mean, we were introduced very recently via our mutual friend Grant Guys, and I mean, have you been in the North and South Island, attracted to the South Island specifically?
So I've never been to the North Island. I mean, I've flown through Auckland and I played mini golf at that little mini golf place by the airport during a 12-hour layover. But no, I've never been north. Like it's all been 3 to 5 month trips down south here.
There would be a considerable amount of people from the South Island who tell you that the mini putt at Auckland was probably the best part about it. But you know, I disabuse you that view. But the North Island, the South Island certainly, it has its charms. But where do you call home normally?
Planet Earth, the Milky Way galaxy. It's a pretty good little arm of the galaxy that our solar system is in. No, but I live in a van, both in the States and here. So, yeah, I haven't had a home base in well over a decade.
Wow.
But American West and then South Island, New Zealand, I guess, are the two places that, if I had to specify a home on planet Earth, those would be the two.
I've never actually had anyone answer. I live on planet Earth, which I guess we all do. What attracted you to the nomadic lifestyle?
I think it was like I had a friend buy an Airstream a long, long time ago and go on the road, and just immediately I saw that and I said, I want to do that. And it took me about another 7 or 8 years to really work out how to work remotely and how to have few enough possessions to have everything fit in one vehicle. But I've been on the road for, over 10 years now. And I think it's just the freedom of it. And I tend to thrive on chaos, and being on the road definitely enhances the chaos of life.
It feels like one of those things that you either need to be supremely, almost sort of preternaturally organized, or live with that kind of degree of chaos when my family's rented a camper van, as we call it, and gone down to like the Blue Lake, 24 hours of Blue Lake. There's a couple of hour period where we're all sort of standing in a line together trying to navigate our way around this tiny, which seems big at the start, but it's a relatively tiny space to inhabit, hey?
Oh yeah, I mean with multiple people for sure. When you're by yourself, you can be as chaotic as you want to be, and no one's there to judge that chaos.
And I mean, you're an editor for iRunFar. You write a column, whānau. You're involved in the great outdoors on lots of modalities. I mean, did you grow up as an outdoors lover? Were you an outdoors kid, or was that something that came in later life?
And I think like I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, which is like in the 90s was the free range child capital of everything. Like we just roamed free and lived right up next to the mountains and would just go wandering. But I was a swimmer, so it was sort of like my sports were done indoors and like in a very confined space. And then got a road bike because I wanted to do triathlons, which never happened, thankfully. No offense to triathletes, but yeah, got into mountain biking, and then through mountain biking got much more into the outdoors, and then picked up trail running after that. And I feel like the trail running has really been what has really pushed the limits of like how far I can get out into the wilderness.
What was I guess you could say you've done a deconstructed triathlon, right? Over the course of your, you're recreating your sporting career. You've done a lot of stuff in the pool, on
Yeah,
the
for
bike,
sure.
and on feet. What was I'm really keen to touch on all of those, but what was the sort of the spark that led you to, I mean, was it just growing up in Boulder that led you to sort of being in the great outdoors in terms of on
I
your
mean,
2 feet?
yeah, I think it's hard to grow up in Boulder and not end up somewhat outdoorsy. Like it's just so ingrained in the culture. Um, I mean, so many great trail runners have come out of there that it's hard to. I mean, I guess people grow up there and then move to the city and lead much more normal lives than how I ended up. But I think it definitely opened the door to being a free range adult, um, being able to grow up just wandering in the wilds, I guess. So,
I mean, do you think it has anything to do, and as someone who lives at sea level, it seems like such an inane question, but being up high, is that, do you find it odd kind of coming down and you're in Golden Bay, not renowned for its, alpine vistas? Do you find it weird being at sea level?
I find it lovely. Like you can run up hills
Yeah.
because most of the time in Colorado, I live sort of at a little under 3,000 meters, so
Wow.
9,200 feet. It's like that's base level, and you can run down hills, and if you're feeling good, you can run flats. But anything uphill, you're pretty much walking. And so like I love coming down here and like being able to walk up or run up steep trails and be like, "Ooh, my lungs can keep up with me." Like it's a total novelty. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, that's the old adage, isn't it? What do they say? Train high, race low.
Yeah. Yep. But then I go back to Colorado in the summer at the end of New Zealand summer and go back for Colorado summer, and it's a 2 week period of feeling pretty miserable
Right.
before my body remembers what to do.
Yeah. I've tended to flip that script, and I tend to train low and race relatively high. So it's I don't recommend that either. It's
I was
it's
going to ask,
not the
how does that
most.
work out?
No, it's not good. But it's life is a journey, as they say, and we take things forward. Whilst you're here, I mean, we're getting into sort of peak outdoorsy season. Are you going to be strapping a bib on at all, or are you just here for the golden sands and the clear water of the Upper South Island?
I was originally signed up for the Wild. Like I raced the Wild last year and got myself a free entry for this year, and was actually super excited to actually show up somewhat fit and ready to race. And then, of course, we all know that is no longer. So I'm pretty sad about that. Like the Revenant has always held an appeal to me, but I don't think this is a year for it. And like, I don't know, there's Northburn, which is a hard rock qualifier, which you never know. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what I'm having for dinner tonight, so let alone what I'm doing for the rest of the summer.
And I wanted to talk to you about this. I wanted to talk to you sort of about the year or what 2024, because you are involved in running media, and you're involved in storytelling around running and narratives, and just what 2024, I guess, can teach us, or what it's shown us about the way that things are going in the sport. And I think the Wild being cancelled, that's kind of, do you think that that's sort of representative of a greater trend? Like, things are getting busier, there's more races that are dividing the population, and that some stuff will fall by the wayside?
I don't know the details of what happened behind the Wild. Like, I've heard that there's this new race in Nelson that is the same weekend, which
The spectacle.
which I'm not privy to like how much of the Wild falling apart was due to that or not. It does seem like for like as small of a country as you are, and for as many weekends there are in a year, like maybe that could have been timed a little bit better and made space for everyone. But I mean, I'm friends with Mal, so it's like for me to have the Wild canceled was pretty heartbreaking, and like knowing how much work he's put into that over the years. Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know if it's a sign of bigger things, but I know that I'm really sad about it.
I mean, it's not just the spectacle. It's 1 week after Kepler. There is also, I think, the Valley Ultra is the same weekend as well. So that's 3 events in the South Island, and there's one other, maybe Y2K, maybe the running race in the Lower North Island. I can't remember. I don't wish to offend any of the trail running community, but there was at least 3 races on that weekend. So, and the week after, Kepler, which sells out in seconds. So it's going to be a hard push for anyone, and it must be really sad for Mal and the crew to have to make that call.
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm bummed. Like it's hard for me to take like any personal emotion out of it and make a journalistic call of what is actually going on in the world of ultra running and trail running, because I'm really sad about it.
Yeah. And certainly I wasn't trying to get you to answer dispassionately. I mean, it's that thing, isn't it? It's been kind of a bit of a shitty year in some ways. Hey, like things just feel like everyone's, stuff's hard. It's been a long, it's the year after the year before, and it's been a long year, and stuff kind of feels a little bit gnarly around the edges in some spaces. Hey, and that's without even adding a partisan view to that.
Yeah. And I mean, we're living in weird times. I think that's really the only way to describe, we're living in weird times. And I think it's a matter of like, we all have to take care of each other, and we all have to be kind to each other, and we all have to do our best to get along. But yeah, I'm sad about the Wild.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, is it freeing, or is it slightly anxiety provoking that, you said that you don't know what you're having for dinner tonight, and that, which is a fairly reasonable standpoint for a lot of people, but then you're thinking, oh, I might go into Northburn. Does that fill you with happiness, or kind of a sense of also a little bit of gnawing dread?
And I think that for me, I've learned that I don't do well chasing big goals. I do really well chasing shiny things in the periphery. Like if something shiny and exciting pops up, like I'm really good at putting all my focus on that. And yeah, for me, it's, if I were to be like, I'm going to race Northburn, then I would spend the next 3 months or whatever it is, like training for Northburn and writing about Northburn and wondering if I should drink a beer or eat a donut or eat a croissant or whatever. And I raced bikes for a lot of years and did all that. Like I watched my diet and did all the training and did all my intervals and all that. And when I came to running, I just wanted to play. And it's always been, I've just wanted to play. And so all the good running events that I've been a part of have just been sort of spur of the moment last minute entries, last minute decisions to do them. And for me, the place I'm in my life right now, where I don't want to plan too far ahead or focus on any one thing too much, it works really well to be like 90% fit, 90% race fit, and then just show up and have a good time rather than fret about stuff and then not drink the beer. I want to drink my beer.
That's Stephen Fry said, he made some point like some dude shows up to the gate of heaven in St. Peter's there, and he said, did you have the beer? And he said, no, alcohol is it's bad for your health and it's raw. And he said, but I made you that really delicious beer so you could experience it. I mean, there's that balance, isn't it? Like we need to enjoy the things in our lives which are enjoyable, right? And there's also a beauty in that sort of laser focus. What got you into, what sport was it that you were doing your intervals and not having the donuts or the beer? What was that?
I was a bike racer for a lot of years. So I was really into the long distance stuff. So the multi-day bike packing, self-supported, go out and race for anywhere from 2 to 19 days by yourself. And yeah, did that for, I raced bikes for the better part of a decade, and a good chunk of that fairly seriously and fairly successfully. And yeah, when I stopped racing bikes, I was sort of like, I'm never going to do another core workout and I'm going to eat all the donuts I want. And I couldn't eat all the donuts I wanted. I discovered that pretty quick. And I'm still, I do some core work now because I'm old enough to know that as you get older, you have to do your core work or else things fall apart pretty quick. But yeah, I never wanted to go back to the rigid training that I did when I was a bike racer.
It seems like, what years were you racing seriously between?
The bike packing stuff was sort of between 2010 and 2013. I had a good string of races there, and then I raced a bunch of 100-milers in the 2008, 2009 era and had a fair bit of success there. And I've raced pretty much every type of bike, from downhill to cyclocross to road to mountain to everything, over the course of being in college till when I stopped racing in 2013. So I did the whole spectrum.
It's incredible. It seems like it's so, you've got Lyle Wilcox now and well, she's been around for ages, but ripping it up and that kind of long distance stuff is so, it's so fashionable now. Well, not fashionable, but it's so kind of, there's a lot of money and support and all that around what do you reckon the appeal is?
I mean, for me, it was a new sport. We didn't know how to do it. We were strapping racks to our bikes and strapping dry bags to those racks, and the routes were all unknown and the routes were new, and there weren't turn by turn guides to I feel like in this day and age you can look up everything. You can live stream 19-day Tour Divide, and back then it was brand new to all of us. I think there was a sense of just figuring it out. I've always been into working out the puzzle of whatever I'm doing, and bike packing for me was a puzzle, and it also meant that I didn't have to go to work for long extended periods of time, which was great.
What's it like doing a race like the Tour? I mean, I know that you wear the Kennett brothers. I think it was Jonathan Kennett from here. He finished the Tour Divide. What's it like undertaking a ride like that? That's just so self-supported.
I mean, I thought I'm really good at being by myself and being in my own head. I did Tour Divide in 2012, which feels like absolutely forever ago. But I did it with no music, which I think no one does it without music. But it's just a day at a time, an hour at a time, a minute at a time. If you leave Banff, Canada, and you think, well, I have to pedal 2,700 miles, I don't even know what that is in Ks. It's a long ways. But if you think about it in terms of that I'm going to be out here for 3 weeks or close to 3 weeks, it's impossible. It feels mentally impossible to do that, and then you give up. But it's well, I'm going to make it to lunchtime today, or I'm going to make it to the next town and have an ice cream. I'm going to make it to the next town and have dinner or whatever. And so you split it up into little segments between towns. And then you don't think too far ahead, which I guess is maybe a metaphor for my life of deal with what's in front of you. And then whatever's down the road, you deal with later.
It feels like sometimes that's quite an uncommon way to approach things, hey, because we're so, I guess, bombarded these days with the immediacy of everything all the time, and frankly, being alone with one's thoughts for any length can be quite terrifying. But how long? 19 days you did Tour Divide?
I did 19 days, yeah, which was at the time a women's FKT, and then Lael took it from me a few years later. But I had my glory year or two before she came, and made it look silly, but that's okay.
I think you get those athletes, isn't it? It's second becomes the new first, really, when you get it. It's like
Lael went really, really quick.
What did Lael do it in?
Oh, I think she's done it in like 16 days now, high 16s.
Wow.
Really, really fast. And it's like women are doing it on single speeds in 19 days now, which, like, when I did it, it was a really fast time. Like, I think I brought it down from 25 days for the women's record. And now it's like the top 10 women all go under 19 days. And so seeing that evolution in the sport has been really, really cool, like just in a decade. To have it go so fast and the fields get so much deeper.
You have to wonder sometimes, and I think about where we're kind of at with the pointy end of the field with ultra marathons too. Looking at the you would have seen the at Western States and UTMB and other big races, the elite crew situation, how quick people are in and out of aid stations, and I wonder if that's happening. I mean, I know Tour Divide is self-supported, but these big long gravel races, I wonder if that's sort of happening as well. And if that, it's cool, right? If you're chasing an overall you're chasing the win or the FKT or the a personal best. But man, it looks pretty stressful. Hey, that kind of it's very quick.
Yeah, I mean, it was strange coming to ultra running from self-supported bikepacking, because it's like, for us, no one's allowed to come ride with you, and no one's allowed to bring you food, no one's allowed to bring you anything, help you in any way. To like come into the world of ultra running, where it's like, oh, you want to feed me sandwiches every 10K? Like, really? Okay, like, I'm not going to argue with that. But it is, a part of me wants to, like, what would ultra running look like if you didn't have pacers and you didn't have aid stations, or maybe you just had like a drop bag and it had water stops or whatever, or you had to filter your own water. Like, what would that look like? Like, I'd love to see an ultra race series where it's maybe even like multi-day routes where you have to be out for like 2 to 3 days and cover a certain distance, or like even just have checkpoints and like self-supported, carry everything you need, ready, set, go. Like, yeah, we don't have a running equivalent to what bike pack racing is, and I'd love to see that evolve.
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? The difference between something like Tour Divide, where there's very and for that, so you're going from Canada to New Mexico to the border, aren't you? You're going through the United States of America, from Canada right through. And do you go to, is it Antelope Falls?
Antelope Wells, yeah.
Antelope Wells, sorry.
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's like right on the New Mexico border. Yeah.
So there's a genuine, I mean, unless you're with someone, but there's a lot of wildlife, there's a lot of opportunity for stuff to go awry, both mechanically and physiologically, right? That's not even counting sort of misadventure. It seems like our space, ultra running, is being sort of safe in the outdoors, albeit a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, it would be really cool to, like, I mean, I understand, like, race directors they have liabilities and they have to have required gear lists, and I get that. But like bikepacking, nothing is ever permitted. Like, it's all done under the rules of, like, we can't have prize money, we can't have sponsorship, like, in the races. And it's to do it so we can do it for free, and no one's liable. Like, if something happens to you out there, you're responsible for your own self. and yeah, like that, it's a very different culture than running where everything is like things can go wrong and things do go wrong, but it does feel like a much safer environment to compete slash recreate slash do our crazy endurance stuff in.
I can't imagine what the waiver would look like for an event like that. It would be, I guess, depending on where you were in the world, it would be different, differing in thickness. I'm sure here it would be quite thick. Perhaps in the US it wouldn't be quite as thick, or, but you sort of did that though, didn't you? Because you had a Nolan's 14 FKT.
I did, yeah, and I did it unsupported, which means that I started with everything, versus most people who do it will have a crew and have people meet them and have pacers and whatnot.
So for those perhaps unfamiliar, can you explain what a Nolan's 14 is?
So Nolan's, there's a line of mountains in central Colorado called the Sawatch, and there's 14,000 foot peaks. So peaks over 14,000 feet, which is through 4,000 meters. My math right?
Around there, yeah.
3,500 meters, yeah.
Yeah.
So tall. And there's 54 of these peaks in Colorado. So people love them because it's like a tick list. But so Nolan's 14, you can link up these 14 peaks in about 100 miles, give or take. And it started as a bar bet back in, my history is rusty, but it was a bar bet basically. Can you link these 14 peaks up in under 60 hours? And so one of the guys was like, yeah, I bet I can go do it. And so it sort of became this thing that can you link these peaks up? And you can do it, like you could do it technically all on trail, but the fastest lines require a fair bit of off trail travel and navigation, and depending on how sketchy you want to get, like there's faster lines and slower lines depending on how you go.
I mean, were you in a bar when you thought of it, or were you just looking up at the mountains and thought, like, how did you become aware of such a thing?
I spent a lot of time backcountry skiing in those hills probably 15, 20 years ago, like long before I even thought that I would ever become a runner. And yeah, like I knew about the line, and I was like, oh, wouldn't that be cool? And I think I sort of initially thought about it as like, could I ski it? Which no one's ever skied it, but I was like, that seems more fun than running because running is dumb and hurdy. But yeah, then when I started running, it became sort of it felt so out of reach. Like I was a beginner runner. Like I was like doing a 10K was a big deal, but it was like, I knew about Nolan's. And then, so my friend Megan had the unsupported FKT, and someone had taken it and she was going back for another run at it. And so I ended up going out and scouting a bunch of it with her in the summer leading up to it, and then paced her for 2 of the 14 mountains. And at the time, it still felt super out of reach because it was like the thing that the superstars of running did. Like it wasn't me, who like can't focus on anything for longer than a week, let alone like a summer of scouting. But it was like the type of thing that like every time I was in that mountain range, I'd go out with a friend and scout a mountain or two or go play around on it. And then, yeah, last summer I had 3 weeks of, not a lot going on. So I was sort of like, well, maybe I'll go give this a nudge. Like I really have no other plans, which is like how all my things happen. I have no plans, and a shiny thing pops up in the periphery and off I go. So, and I did it so last minute, I had no choice besides to do it unsupported because I wasn't about to like put together a crew and figure out the logistics of doing it any way other than unsupported.
It's interesting. I mean, I don't know, is it compartmentalization? You talk about how you can't focus on anything for more than a week, but you raw dogged a Tour Divide in 19 days. Like you did it without music, or, that there's that thing that some dudes are doing in flights now where they just stare at the in-flight map. Like that's essentially what you did for 19 days. So there must be some focus. There's the ability to lock in somewhere.
I think it's probably like classic ADHD, right? Like the things that I want to focus on, it's laser focus, and then everything else in my life is pure and utter chaos. So
I'm familiar with it. So tell me, I mean, what was your setup like? Like you're going into this, you've got these, multitudes of mountains 14,000 feet, 100 miles, you're by yourself. What are you taking with you?
I started with 10,000 calories and ate maybe half of it. I lost my stomach the first night and then never really got it back over the course of 57 hours. But yeah, I just had a little 25-liter Ultimate Directions, one of their original fast packs. Because I was doing it so last minute, like I didn't have time to like really think too much about gear. But I think I had like tights and a sun shirt, and I took a down jacket and rain gear and an emergency bivy and a pile of food and like a small first aid kit because I was being a responsible adult. And yeah, I mean, not a whole lot else really. Gloves, a hat, headlamps.
You got to wonder about those first aid kits. They do a little. They're pushing for something like that. Like a small first aid kit it's potentially picking up a lot of slack, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had some Band-Aids and Neosporin, and I don't get it was the type of thing that I always think that when I'm about to go out and do something dumb, I'm like, if there's an accident, what is the accident report going to read? And I was like, at least they'll say she had a first aid kit. Like if I fall off a cliff, at least I had a first aid kit.
Had a whistle, those emergency whistles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What was that process of being up so high and pushing that hard for such a long time? What was that like? Was it comparable to something like the Tour Divide, where you were pushing, but 19 days is a lot different than a 57-hour effort?
And I think on Tour Divide, you have to take care of yourself. Like you have to make good decisions early on, because if you make bad decisions the first 3 days, you're done and you're never going to make it. And I think Nolan's, to some level, you have to make good decisions. Like you can't take it out too hot, or else you'll blow to pieces. Especially like the high elevation, it's super hard to recover if you've gone too deep early on. But I don't know, like it didn't feel as, it's hard in a different way, I guess. Like you're pushing the sleep deprivation more, you're pushing the speed more. Like I definitely took Nolan's out too fast. Like the first peak, before I left, Megan like gave me the pep talk of like, don't take it out too hard, make good decisions. And got to the top of the first peak and looked at my watch and was like, oh, Megan's gonna be pissed at that one. I was like, she's like been an amazing mentor in my running and executes races and efforts like that so well. And yeah, I knew she was full on watching my tracker and being like, Eszter, what are you doing? What are you doing? So yeah, it's different than multi-day bike packing, but it's also the same. It's just one foot in front of the other, and even when things are terrible, you just one foot in front of the other, keep going. And
what was the feeling of? What was your kind of point of most challenge in that route?
The second night, I was going up over. It was the second to last mountain, Mount Elbert, which is the high point of Colorado. And I realistically, I should have taken a nap beforehand because like I know that I sort of start to go loopy after 40 hours of no sleep. Like that's always been my limit of where I start to hallucinate. And like if you have pacers and aid stations and whatnot, if you start hallucinating, you still have someone to tell you, like, to keep you grounded in reality, versus if you're hallucinating at 14,000 feet in the middle of the night, like things can go sideways pretty quickly. And I was really aware that I was like having a conversation with myself. Like it was super windy. I was on this ridge trying to figure out like how to get down, like skirting this like little cliff band thing, and like sitting myself down and being like, Eszter, you need to not dead yourself. Like you need to make decisions that don't wind up dead. And it was like this super surreal experience of like me talking to myself of like, you need to like be smart about this. And yeah, like it was a moonless night. Like I had no moon whatsoever because it was like a last minute, let's go do this. So I didn't have a good choice for like moon windows. But yeah, like I had to completely get in my bivy and was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. and like laid in my bivy in a pile of rocks and slept for probably an hour, like full on, like I had quit in my head, being like, I have one more mountain left, but I'm just going to walk out of here in the morning because this is dumb. But then like waking up and being like, well, I can still get this FKT. If I get my move on and get moving, I can do it. So like I fell apart pretty badly. I
feel like it would be hard not to fall apart pretty bad with such an effort.
Yeah, it's true. It's like everyone has some point of like roughness. And it was like I hadn't gone back to scout this section because I'd run it a few years earlier, and I'm like, oh, it's just like this big broad ridge that you're climbing up Mount Elbert, and there's nothing navigationally difficult. But then in the dark, when you're hallucinating, there's a dozen little side ridges, and if you look at my GPX, it's like I went on a proper vision quest every single little side ridge. And like I look at that GPX now, I'm like, what were you thinking? And it was
Wow.
like I couldn't navigate. It was wild. Like I've never had like lost my navigation abilities quite so badly.
That's I mean, not to be too dramatic about it, that's kind of knife edge stuff, right?
Well, I mean, had it been like a cold, windy, miserable night, like yeah, it was definitely like I stood at the top of Mount Elbert and there was like the trail down to town, and then there was like the route down to the next mountain. And going up to the summit, I was like, I talked myself into, you're taking the trail down to town because this is dangerous. And then you get to the intersection and then you take the trail to the next mountain because you've gone that far and you think maybe, just maybe, you can pull it off. But no, like it probably wasn't the safest thing. Like I probably wouldn't tell my mom about it.
Hope she doesn't listen to this. What was the feeling like of finishing?
It was cool because it was like I hadn't told anyone that I was doing it because I don't know, like no pressure, no expectations. It's easier if like people just don't know about it. And like I posted it on Instagram before I left because the FKT people, it's considered like a premier FKT, and they need you to publicly announce that you're doing it and
Right.
with the tracking and whatever. So I begrudgingly like told the world about it before I left, but then like left my phone off the whole time. I think it was relief because it was like 3 mountains to go. I probably had like a 3.5 hour gap on the FKT. So like 3 mountains to go, I was feeling like I've got this. I'm solid. This is a super good run. And then I ended up with only like 39 minutes on it. So like I managed to squander like nearly 3 hours mucking around on those last 2 mountains, hallucinating and doing whatever I was doing, vision questing on Mount Elbert. So I think it was a relief because it was like the whole last couple miles, it's like, oh, what if my GPX track is wrong and it's actually like 5 miles rather than 1 mile? Like, and I was like, if it's an extra 2 miles, like there's no more FKT. Like that's done. And so I think it was more relief than anything that like, yeah, nothing else went wrong, or not, yeah, that I was able to pull it off in the end.
How did the body feel afterwards?
Like my feet hurt, but like the next day I was up and walking around and I was okay. Like I was surprisingly, yeah, it wasn't bad.
Do you think
like,
that has anything?
I've been way more wrecked after different stuff, for sure.
Do you think that has something to do with the fact that you put relatively little? I mean, obviously there was pressure on yourself because you had the expectation that you were going to get the FKT, or you were gonna rub up against it. But the fact that you did like, I'm going to get this FKT because I've been told I have to post up about it, and then like put your phone in your bag off and took off into the mountains. Do you think that lack of pressure was something useful?
I mean, for me, yeah, because I don't like that external pressure. Like I put a lot of pressure on myself to do the best I can do at stuff, but I don't thrive well when other people are expecting stuff of me. And so I think like the fact that I yeah, didn't tell anyone. I put the phone in the bag, wasn't going to turn it on the whole time. It was just like I could make good decisions in my little like Nolan's 14 bubble that wasn't being influenced by anyone outside of it. Like it was just me, myself, and I. And music this time. I took music.
I was going to ask you, did you?
I know. I'm
Oh
getting
yeah, no,
soft.
yeah, getting soft, and yeah, that's right. In your later years, you're just like, you used to be so, you know, uncompromising. What did you listen to? Really interested to know.
Oh, I have really terrible taste in music, so I'm not going to admit this. Like,
Well, I might have terrible taste in music considering to your taste in music. So,
oh, I had the Hamilton soundtrack on a bunch.
right.
Um, yeah, I call it sing along music, like any like sort of like cheesy pop song or like various Broadway musicals. Um, Anything that I can sing along to in my head that like takes my brain out of whatever it's looping on at that point of time. Like I can't do dance music or stuff without lyrics because you're like for me, music is to rescue a looping brain. Like if I'm on a thought pattern of like, oh, this hurts, this sucks, whatever, like that's when I put music in. And sing along lyrics for me um, break that looping pattern.
I think there's no such thing these days, and I've been part of cultures where you have to be so painfully in line with your musical tastes and you can't cop to liking what you like. You know, the heart wants what the heart wants. And it's really nice that we're in a space where there's no such thing as a guilty pleasure. You know, there's no such thing as you could kind of admit to liking, you know, what you like. It's nice. It's I guess that's one freeing aspect of the fact that we can listen to pretty much whatever we want to listen to when we want to listen to it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not a playlist that I would put on in a car if I was like driving with someone because they would just look at me and be like, "What are we listening to?" But it was me on Nolan's. I could do what I want.
Was there anyone else out at the time doing an attempt, or did you see climbers or sort of random people just looking at you like, what is this person doing?
There's one guy I passed on. I think we were climbing the third peak. I caught up to him, and he was doing the same thing. And he was very much like, "Oh, I don't think I'm gonna be able to finish. Like I'm just dragging whatever." And I was sort of like walked with him for a little bit, and then I was like, "Okay, peace out." Um, and yeah, I got his name, but I forget. But yeah, and then it's like so these mountains are super popular. Like they're bucket list items. On any summer day, you're gonna have hundreds of people going up most of them. And the majority of them I was up sort of like weird hours of the day, like either in the dark or really early morning. But the second day, like I was starting to get a little bit loopy. It was like midday the second day and going up this Mount Huron Peak. Is Huron? Yeah. And it was like middle of the day and you get up there and it's this, you, you come up sort of a back way, but then you follow the main ridge, like the main route for maybe like 2K, 3K. And it was just like this line of people. So I passed a bunch of them and at the top, like take a picture, just like to document that I'm there in case my tracking is weird. And like go turn around to go, and everyone was like, "Oh, aren't you gonna stay up here and enjoy it?" And I was like, "No, I gotta go." And everyone just looked at me like I was like this crazy person. And and then I probably passed like 50 people on the way down. Like it was a great motivator, just like having these like rabbits to chase the whole way down of people just hiking. Um, but yeah, that was the only busy mountain of the 14. The rest were, I think, I don't think I saw people at the summit of any of the other 13.
Wow. And I guess where you live in the winter or where you're from is a lot different from where we are, where there's, outside of the water, pretty much nothing that's going to jack you up too much in terms of wildlife. Was there any interesting animal encounters?
Oh, I don't know. I think that it's so funny because like Kiwis in general are so scared of like bears and mountain lions and whatnot. And like as an American who's been coming here as a mountain biker and as a trail runner and as a pack rafter and just a general outdoor human, like your chances of dying over here are way higher than of dying in the States. Like I feel like the terrain here is so much harsher and harder and wanting to kill you than any predator we have over in the States.
I don't know if you could say, I don't know, you'd write a paper on that maybe. I don't know if you'd be able to quantify that. Like, although, yeah, I guess that's the thing though, there's a combination of user error, right? If you're going to fall off a ridge, potentially, rather than, that's a cute little bear. I wonder where the other bigger bear is. Oh, it's over there behind me. And, that's a different thing.
Yeah. But the thing, like animal encounters are rare. And here's my theory with New Zealand trails, because I feel like American trail runners come over here and we get our asses kicked. Like everyone who comes over here who has come from the States is like, this is really hard. Like we weren't expecting this. And my theory is like, if you take a conglomerate of, I can only speak for South Island trails, but if you pick a random trail on the South Island of any dock, whatever designated trail, and you take any random trail in the US that's like Forest Service or BLM designated, you're way more likely to die on a New Zealand trail in terms of just like falling off a cliff or whatever, crossing a river or whatever. Like the trails here they're steeper, they're muddier, they're slicker, and they want to kill you.
So it's the land itself rather than that brown bear that's going to get you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I was in Australia a couple of months ago, and apparently because it was unseasonably warm, there was funnel web spiders out, which apparently super poisonous, like super poisonous, and all the Australians were freaked out. But because being in New Zealand, you're like, oh, that's a spider, cool. It's got to keep the flies away, not it's going to kill an albatross with its bite. Like it was actually. I found it quite refreshing, not being mortally terrified of them. But
yeah, I think Australia is like a whole other level above the U.S. Like when I went over to Oz, like I was way more terrified of like the ants that jump up and like if they bite you, you die. Like they have like jumping jack ants or something. That'll kill you. Like that's way more terrifying than any mountain lion, I think.
Yeah, I was running through the Blue Mountains, and they have tea tree, they have manuka, very close to manuka, and I was in the dark and sort of reaching out and grabbing these little branches and putting my hand around the back of them in the dark, and then every single time I do that, I'd recoil like I'd been electrocuted because I was thinking, what is around the other side of this branch that I'm grabbing onto? And I didn't have to worry about that. Here, we are pretty, apart from, like you say, apart from the land which wants to kill us, we're pretty lucky in that respect, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and sandflies. Like I always, when people ask about New Zealand, I'm like, you have to remember that sandflies are too small to get picked up by cameras. That's why you don't see them. Like that's why it looks like a paradise.
Hey, how did you get involved with iRunFar?
I had been friends and running buddies with Megan, who's editor-in-chief. At the time was managing editor. I met her. She was pacing a mutual friend at a race that I was also racing. And we like stopped in the middle of the trail. I had a blog at the time, and she was like, "Hey, I read your blog." And I was like, "Hey, I read your website." And yeah, we became friends after that. And we work really like as a team, work together really well in the mountains, just as adventure buddies. And adventured a bunch. And then, yeah, like a couple of job positions showed up at iRunFar that sort of required commitment. And I was like, ooh, not really good at the commitment thing. And then I think it was like 3 summers ago or 4 summers ago, she's like, I just need help for 3 months working on these buyer's guides. I just need an editor. And I was like, okay, 3 months commitment. I can do that. And now here we are. I don't know. I think the better part of 3.5 or 4 years later, where I do a bunch of stuff for them, and none of it is like proper salaried job, but it's all freelance, fun stuff that I like to do.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, when we spoke last, I told you, I've told the story before how I found a copy of Relentless Forward Progress at a library that I was at. I liked running. I knew about running, but then finding this book, it was like, it was, it wasn't real. God bless the librarian that decided that, relentless forward progress was at the Titirangi War Memorial Library, which is like a small library in the Waitakere Ranges of Auckland. Like, it's an incredible thing. But how's it been that, like, it's a mainstay of the culture, right? It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, like Brian started it a long time ago. I don't even know the year, 15, 20-ish. Oh, I hope Megan doesn't listen to this. It was a long time ago. But yeah, like everyone knows iRunFar, and I feel so lucky to get to be a small part of it. Like getting to write a column and getting to freelance and getting to work on their gear guides. Like it's a super great team to work with. Like it's just a good group of humans. Like really. Which is probably why they've been so successful, is they're good humans in a sport that values good humans.
They really were at the forefront too of like going to races and documenting it on, the website formerly known as Twitter. And I originally thought, like, that doesn't sound very exciting at all. And then I sort of thought, I'll try this out, and just wasted a weekend refreshing the Twitter, refreshing my feed. That was, it seems like, everyone's like you said, there's live streams now. Every man and their grandmother's posting to TikTok, and there's all this sort of stuff happening. But that was the one of the first kind of outfits that were going out and being at these races, and for very little gain apart from doing it.
Yeah. I mean, they both Megan and Brian love the sport, and yeah, they've done a really good job with the site. It's been cool to see, like both as a friend, like being a friend of both of them, and now getting to be a part of it has been a fun evolution. That, yeah, very lucky to get to do it.
So apart from maybe doing Northburn or maybe doing a bunch of other races, how long are you kicking around in Golden Bay for?
Golden Bay, another week and a half. I'm watching some friends' kitties. So yeah, cat sitting and doing all the runs around here. I'm hanging out, living the good life, the good Golden Bay life. And then, like, the tentative plan is to head down towards Wanaka and go hang out with that Wanaka trail running crew, because they're pretty cool. So
Yeah.
go back and
They
see
are
all
pretty
see all
cool.
of them. Yeah.
Nice one. And was it? And you go when the leaves turn? Is that it? Is that the?
In theory, I have a 3-month visa. I get the 3-month is what I can come over on, super easy, and then I can get a 6-month one if I prove that I'm not a complete dirtbag and I have some money. They apparently will give Americans visas pretty easily because they think we have money. Some of us do, some of us don't. But yeah, like in theory, like I usually come over anywhere between 3 and 5 months, depending on what's going on with my life. And usually I come over on the 3-month visa, and then something catches my attention, and someone's like, "You should stay longer," and then I stay longer. So as of right now, I'll
Nice.
head south and hang out for a bit.
It sounds I'll be honest. Sounds terrifying, but it also sounds very, very freeing. I think that we all have this, and maybe that's what I look for in that sort of the trail running thing, is that it's this sort of con- constrained unbridledness. It's kind of a dichotomy, really, isn't it? Like I can be wild and free and reasonably tough, but also still come home to my house and then go do a job. It's yeah, it sounds terrifying, but I don't mean that in any pejorative way, but it also sounds incredibly freeing.
I think it's like people's brains are wired differently. I think my brain has always been wired to seek novelty, and like I've been in this house cat sitting for, I think I'm going on like day 9, and like I'm fully going stir crazy. Like being indoors and in the same spot and not like cruising around. is actually really, really hard. Like I know that I need this like sort of downtime to catch up on some life stuff. But for me, like the idea of living in a house full time and coming back to the same spot every night, like that's terrifying to me. But yeah, like how people's brains are wired differently is always super fascinating. Like what works for one person completely doesn't work for another.
Well, I mean, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? It's that sort of wolf you feed also. Like it might really work for someone like me, but I've never had the chance to find out. But it's certainly exciting to consider the options, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's not to say that it will never happen for you, right? Like in the end,
I mean, it would enable quite a pivot. But yeah, that's right. Or at least elements. But look, I mean, I saw your cat. I saw your cat landlord walking along behind you there. It's been so nice to meet you over these past weeks, and it's been really, really lovely having you on Dirt Church Radio. Eszter, I'm going to ask you one question that we ask every single person who comes on Dirt Church Radio, and that's been, what's been your greatest run ever?
Greatest? Is it like the cop out to say the one I went on this morning?
No, it's your choice.
Yeah, I think it's always like whatever is the most recent or whatever's coming up. And I went running just up on historic Ramika track with a friend from down the street. And yeah, we had a great little like hour-long cruise around Gab Fest. Go hang out in the bush. And it was great. It was absolutely, yeah, a great way to spend a morning. So yeah, I'm going with that.
Beautiful. And who knows, maybe tomorrow will be your greatest run ever as well.
Well, it's like there's the idea of dogs. Like, what's the greatest day of a dog's life? It's like whatever that day's the best.
Every day, yeah.
And so I think we should all try to be a little bit like that. That every day is the best day of our lives, as much as we can. Like trying not to be toxically positive and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I guess it's that thing, isn't it? Like maybe every day in these times, every day can be the day that we're doing our best to have the best day. Maybe.
Yeah, I like that. I like. Yeah.
Thank you, Eszter.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
Dirt Church Radio is presented by me, Matt Raymond, Ellie Pottinger, and Andrew McDowell. We're on all the podcast platforms, so like, follow, and give us a rating. It really helps. We're on social media at Dirt Church Radio. You can email us at dirtchurchradio@gmail.com. Don't forget to sign up to the Aid Station podcast and our weekly newsletter. Don't forget to write in with your greatest run ever. Thanks, Rigby. We'd love to hear from you, and you can read them on the website too. And thanks to our supporters, Further Faster, That's It, and Squad Run. Stay tuned for our show in 2 weeks when we've got another great guest lined up. Mā te wā.
Thanks, Rigby.